the Midrash tells us that Noah built the ark no less than 120 years. 120 years. And do you know at what age he started building that ark?
600?
At 480 years old is when he started building the ark. And how do I know that? Well, the Torah says clearly, at 600 years old, he entered the ark. 120 years, I ask you, all due respect. If you commission a single individual, okay, let's grant it, he had no help. But an individual to construct for you a boat. No, he built it himself. A boat, a large boat. It can't possibly take 120 years. Even if you're by yourself, there's no electricity. There was no wiring to do. Okay, to make the beams, to make the boards. But 120 years, ktsat magzim, it's a little too much. So look what the Midrash tells us. The Midrash tells us God told Noah to take seeds, plant them, and let them grow to trees. And then take those trees, and with those trees, go and build the ark. So that now explains why 120 years, right? We live... They took the wood from the trees that grew. So all of us that we know, we live here in Hollywood, Florida. Hollywood is blessed with oak trees, which are anywhere between 50 and 100 years old, depending on how big they are. Now that explains it a little better. But why? Why would God tell Noah to do that? I was learning the Parashat with my son the other day, and he asked me a great question. He said, Abba, if there were such evil, because I was going on and on how evil the people were, and they were not acting proper and not nice, and we'll get into that later in the class exactly what they were doing. Abba, if they're so bad, Hashem is almighty, Hashem is the strongest. Let him finish with them in a second. Why did he drag it? Why did he even need to bring a flood and he had to make Noah build the ark and the whole thing? Save Noah in a miraculous way, just like this was a miracle in and of itself. And what's this whole story? So the answer to both of these questions is one of the same. And that is, God wanted the world, the evil individuals, to see Noah plant seeds. So for all intents and purposes, Noah was in the real estate business. And all of a sudden, Noah became a farmer. He went and he purchased the seeds to plant trees, and everyone was talking about it. That's exactly what God wanted. Everyone was talking, did you know Noah, the real estate tycoon, the righteous individual, he's the only one who conducts business straight? He now became a farmer. Oh, a farmer? Really? Why? Did you hear his crazy story? He thinks God's gonna send a flood soon. He's cuckoo, he's crazy. A couple years later, did you hear? You remember Noah, who was the real estate guy? Oh yeah, now he became a farmer, and now he's into the tree business. He's, what's the word?
Construction.
No, he's a woodcutter. He's a woodcutter first. And then a couple years later, he became a carpenter. And then he became a boat manufacturer. And God wanted the people to see what Noah was doing, to ask, in order that they get a warning. And as I explained my son, God's last resort was to destroy the world and to wipe it clean. He wanted to give them a chance and another chance, 120 years of chance. But what can we do? When a human being is stubborn, a human being is stubborn. There's nothing you can do. But God tried. The interesting part of the Midrash is the way it ends. The Midrash says that when they would approach Noah and tell him, Noah, what are you doing? He would answer back and say, God, in X amount of time, is going to bring a flood. Better your ways. It's because the world's evil. They would answer him back, no. If God brings a flood, he's going to send it to you and destroy you. Now that's a very peculiar exchange. After all, they were the sinners. They were the ones who were corrupt and doing horrible things. I would say, I don't believe you. I would say that's a nice fairy tale. But say if it comes, it's going to happen to you, that's a little bit out of place, right? We could all agree to that. So listen to what the Zera Shimshon answers. He answers based on the Zohar. The Zohar tells us that Noah was actually at fault. At fault for what? Noah was at fault that he did not pray for the generation, for the world, for mankind at that time. As he was building this ark, he should have been praying to God on their behalf. Who did we see this from? I mean, he couldn't have learnt it because it was in the future. From Abraham, very good. Sure. With Sodom, Abraham was negotiating with God. If there's 50, if there's 40, 30, 20, 10, 5, 1. He couldn't even find one, so Abraham had to give in. The Zohar says Noah should have done something similar. Noah should have negotiated. Noah should have prayed to God on their behalf. Noah maybe should have been more forthcoming and involved in trying to help them better their ways. And because of such, when the Nevi'im refer to the flood, this worldwide flood, they refer to the flood of Noah. Ki mei Noach zot li. For this is to me the waters of Noah. What are you calling it the waters of Noah? It should be the waters of death, the waters of corruption, the waters of the world, the waters of evil. The waters of Noah? Noah was the righteous one. No. The Zohar says, even though he was saved and he had merit to be saved, his dismerit was that he did not pray for the world population. And to this, the neighbors, the evil neighbors, answer back to Noah. They felt it. What, do you think you're better than us? Alone? If God brings it, he'll bring it on you. And this is what the Zera Shimshon says, the Midrash means. You can't be selfish. You have to be there for them all. And then the Zera Shimshon brings a couple different, and bear with me because it might be a little bit of a tangent, but it's very interesting. He brings different examples in different stories in the Tanakh, so we'll soon see with Esther and Mordechai, and then different examples even in the Talmud of a similar concept. The first example the Zera Shimshon brings is that of Mordechai and Esther. Mordechai approaches Esther and says, Esther, you need to come forth to the king and you need to beseech him on behalf of your Jewish brothers and sisters to repeal the horrible decree of Haman. And Esther at first, she wasn't so forthcoming. She knew, like anybody, if you come unannounced to a king, as we say, hayav mita, it's over. You will not survive. Then Mordechai tells her, this is what God put you in this position for. You are a gifted individual. You were placed in this palace for this purpose, for this reason. He said, it's worth it to sacrifice yourself, whether it would be physically, partially, completely, on behalf of the Jewish nation. You need to try. And so she did, and we know the end of the story, the successful meeting, and the success of her actually making Achashverosh get rid of Haman and his decree. This is one example he gives down. Another example he brings is the Talmud in Masechet Ta'anit that tells us that when others are suffering, says the tzibur. The tzibur could be a group of people, it could be a community. When others are suffering, one is not allowed to say, it's okay, I have what I have, I'm good, I'm fine. Because the Talmud says one day the tables will turn, as it always does, and when others will come to help you or to console you, God forbid, in your own loss, you won't be consoled. You'll feel this void. And again, the idea is you cannot separate yourself from others in that you think you're fine for yourself. I got an ark for me. The ark's going to save me. I'm doing what God told me to do. No. You need to be there for others at the same time. It's the concept of noseh be'ol havero, holding and helping and being part of, feeling the burden of others. To this, I'll add, even though the Zera Shimshon doesn't add this, but to this I'll add, there was a prohibition God gave to Noah and his family while being in the ark. Just before the prohibition, let me just give you an example of what the ark looked like and a day-to-day in the ark. The bottom level, it was 3 floors. The bottom level was for food and waste, food and garbage. The middle level was all the animals, and they each had their own little cubicle. And the top floor was for Noah and his family. Who traveled on this trip? Noah, his wife, 3 children, and 3 wives. Total of 8 human beings. No, meaning 3 children, and each of them their wives. So 4 men, Noah's 3 sons, his wife, and 3 daughter-in-laws. Okay? So 8 individuals. And all day long, all of them were working very hard, all day, all night. When this one needed to eat, next one needed to eat, and then the next one, and the next one, animal, back to the point where one time the Midrash tells us Noah, working very hard, he was bitten, he was late for the lion's meal, and while he was serving the lion attacked his leg, and from then on, he limped. How old was Noah when he passed away? Does anyone know? 950 years old. 950 years old. So make a math. Noah was in the ark for 1 year exactly. So 350 to 349 years, he limped for the rest of his life because of that account. It was a very serious thing. So they were working very, very hard. Now God gave them a prohibition. He told them, while in the ark, no marital relations were permitted at all. Interesting prohibition. What's so hard? The same way like they made cubicles on floor 2, on floor 3, make cubicles so everything's private and modest. I understand. But the whole time, for the whole year, why not? Open the Chumash, it's clear. I think even Rashi brings it down. If the world is suffering, person cannot have that type of enjoyment. The whole world is coming to destruction. Mankind, all animals besides for the ones that are in there, whether they deserved it or not, are suffering a mass destruction. That's not proper for that time. No marital relations the whole time in the ark. The idea of feeling the pain of others, the idea of praying for others, the idea of not saying, I'm okay, let the others be. It's a very serious concept. Let's go more. He brings another example. Well, we know Ham, he transgressed that prohibition and he was cursed because of it. Let's move forward. He gives another example. This is the famous Gemara in Masechet Makot. I'll tell you what the Gemara says. I'll give you a background as well. When the Jews entered the land of Israel, God tells Moses to separate for yourself 3 designated refugee cities, which would be primarily occupied by Levi'im, and they would be 3 on the right side of the Jordan and 3 on the left side of the Jordan in Eretz Yisrael. And what were the purpose for these refugee cities? They were called Ir Miklat. If an individual inadvertently killed another one, they would come to Bet Din, to see if it was really by mistake or not. And if it was by mistake, he had to go and live in that city. Why, you may ask? Because if not, for his negligence of whatever he possibly could have been doing, however, he did take another's life, even by mistake, the Torah says that the family members, the immediate family members of the deceased, is allowed to kill the person who killed inadvertently. The only way out would be to go and live in the refugee city. Okay, so I'll just give you an example, just to make it, for those of us who are not familiar with it. Let's say Reuven is chopping wood. And while he's chopping, his axe slips out of his hand or cracks. Or if he's on a ladder and the ladder falls, or he falls, and one of the above falls on an individual, Shimon passing by, and Shimon dies. Right away, Reuven has to go to the court, and Bet Din decides, do they know each other? Was it a mistake or a real mistake? Did one owe each other any money? Did they ever have any harsh words? Could it have been planned? It was deemed to not have been planned, and he was really, really an inadvertent, however negligent, manslaughter. That's when the individual would go to the Ir Miklat, and he would have to be there to the end of his life. Except for one small exception. If the Kohen Gadol dies while he's in the refugee city, he was able to leave. Interesting. So the Gemara asks, what does the Kohen Gadol have to do with anything? The Kohen Gadol is in Yerushalayim Ir HaKodesh. He's in the temple. He's working all day, every day. Why does it depend on his death for all of these inadvertent murderers to be freed or not? To the point where the Talmud says the mother of the Kohen Gadol, the mother of the most important person of the Jewish people in that time, would go from city to city serving them meals, serving all of the refugees meals. Why? In order that they don't pray that her son, the Kohen Gadol, dies. Because what would they want? They want to go home to their families. They want to be free. They're in jail. They got to be in this city. So what would they be doing? I want him to die. I want him to die. I want him to die. So what did the mother do? The mother appeased them. Don't pray against my son. Look at this nice meal I'm giving you. Try to give you the most respect. She socialized a little with them. She was pleading. So now why the Kohen Gadol? That's not fair. The Talmud tells us, if the Kohen Gadol would have prayed harder, that there should be no mistakes, inadvertent manslaughters in the whole land of Israel, it wouldn't have happened. It's kind of his fault. Can you imagine what does that mean? He never met them. He never saw them. If you are the leader of the Jewish people, you are the Kohen Gadol, that comes with a responsibility. That comes with the responsibility of you needing to pray for everybody. What does this mean to us? What does this story of Noach mean to us? The Zera Shimshon tells us we're not allowed to be selfish. We're not allowed to be closed. We're not allowed to block everything out. There are certain things we need to block out. There are certain people we need to block out. There are certain influences, most importantly for our children, that we need to block out. Yes. But at the same token, we need to pray on their behalf. If we're able to help them, we have to help them from us to them. If we can bring them closer to God and mitzvot and Torah in any way possible, we have that obligation. As we know, the famous concept, Kol Israel Arvim Ze Lazeh. Each and every Jew, we are all a guarantor for one another. We're all part of the same body. We're all one neshama. We're one soul. We're one body. And therefore, we can never just turn away. We can never turn away and not pray, as we learned from Noach. We need to live up to the opportunity, even be ready to sacrifice, like we learned from Esther. And like we learned from the Gemara, we cannot indulge in excessive joy or say, I'm okay. And like the last part, that importance of praying for the others from the Kohen Gadol. We need to realize that these are the lessons that the Torah is telling us that we're learning from Noach. This is the first Dvar Torah that Zera Shimshon gives. The second one is mind-blowing. Listen to this. God finally has decided that enough giving chances. The world has come to a halt. It needs to come to an end. 120 years passed. God tells Noah, and I'll quote to you in Hebrew and in English. Vayomer Elohim leNoach. God tells Noah, Ketz kol basar ba lefanai. The end of all flesh have come before me. We'll explain what that means. Ki malea haaretz hamas mipenehem. For the earth is filled with robbery through them. Vehineni mashchitam et haaretz, and behold, I am about to destroy the earth. In other words, God is telling Noah, time is done. Mankind has come to their limit. Through Hamas, through robbery, as the translation, and it's time to wipe them clean. The Zera Shimshon asks two very powerful questions. He says, since when does God refer to human beings as basar? Right? Great question, right? Gila. Flesh. Have you ever referred to another human being as flesh? Never. Never. Mr., Mrs., man, human, something, Adam, something. What basar? That's his first question. His second question was, what's the reason that they had to be destroyed? He says, Rashi, right over here on this same couple psukim, tells us two different reasons. He says the same reason of Hamas, which means robbery, which will explain exactly what that means. But then he also says, because of promiscuity, because of immoral actions that they were doing. And the Zera Shimshon asks, which one is it? It's not like Rashi says this one and this one. One time he tells us it's robbery, and one time he tells us it's promiscuity. Which one of the two was it? So what does the robbery mean? Hamas is a very interesting type, we've spoken about this before, of robbery. It's kind of like a forced sale. It means that you come over to somebody and you threaten them, pull a weapon to them, and you tell him, you're going to sell me your car for $100. My car is worth $100,000. I'm not giving it to you for $100. You're going to give me your car for $100, right? No. You pull out your gun, point it at his head. You're going to give me your car, and you're going to sell me your car for $100. And then you throw him $100, you take his keys, and you drive off. Did you steal? No. I bought the car. That's stealing. That's a forced sale. And that's what they did. They were trying to do it and justify their actions. I didn't steal anything. I paid for my services. I paid for the item. So the question is, was it that? Or was it the immorality? This is what Zera Shimshon asks. So he answers with a different midrash. Midrash Yalkut Shimoni says that the people during the time before the flood were walking around unclothed. people would be walking around naked. What does that have to do with anything? That's all the Midrash says. What does that have to do with anything? So listen to what the Zera Shimshon says. Fascinating. He says that the human beings at that time, thievery and robbery was so bad that people were scared they'd be stopped while walking and their clothes off their back would be stolen. Now, it's not like nowadays that they had full closets full of different types of clothes. They had one clothing each. They were scared that their clothing would be stolen off their very back while walking in the streets. They decided to walk out naked. Everybody! Except for Noah, obviously. And then what did that promote? The Zera Shimshon says that promoted the immorality. After all, living in a society where everyone is dressed not dressed, basically, that would only promote sin. And therefore, the Zera Shimshon says it was both reasons. The source was the robbery, as the Pasuk says, Hamas, the forced sale. And then the derivative, the result, was immorality since no one was wearing clothes. And that's what he says, why the Pasuk says, Ketz kol basar. Everyone was just flesh. They wore no clothes. They knew it was wrong. They knew it promoted immorality. But they were just basar, they were flesh. They were not clothed. And to that, the Zera Shimshon says is the reason why the Torah uses that Lashon, and that's why Rashi gives us both of those reasons, because it's both of them, one of them who led to the other, which I think is fascinating. And this is a very strong lesson to all of us as well. In life, we have to understand that there is a way to dress. We're not talking about covering or not covering, but even for occasions, there's a proper way to dress when you come to the synagogue. There's a proper way to be dressed at home. There's places we go where people are dressed properly, and there's places where we should not go when people are not dressed or acting properly. The way a person dresses is very important. We can't just say, well, everyone else is doing it. It preserves the holiness and the modesty of men and women alike. And to this I'll end with one of the most basic and famous questions of why would God decide to send a flood, and the flood would kill the animals but allow all water life to stay in existence. Either way, if living creatures beside for humans were all corrupted, then they should all die. Should have sent set it up all fire.
The animals weren't corrupt.
That was the question. They were or weren't?
They weren't.
So then why did they die? So if all animals were corrupt, let all die, including fish. If the animals were not corrupt, so then don't let even the animals die. All the animals should have been in the ark. 120 years, you could build an ark that could fit all the animals, right? So listen to the answer. The answer the Talmud gives is that in truth, even the animals on land were corrupt. How so? They were not faithful. Lions were not only staying with lions. There was mixed marriages and assimilation amongst even different species, which is horrible. And where would they come up with such an idea? When you live in such a corrupt world, a sick world, even the animals pick up on it and start doing crazy things. What about the fish? The fish is a modest animal. Why? Because it's tzamui min ha'ayin. The Talmud says it is beneath the eye. It's away. It's hidden from the eye. When you put your head in the ocean, you can't see everything. You can only see a certain distance, a certain little area. That's why fish are the most populated species on the planet. Because they're able to procreate all the time. And they have the blessing, an everlasting blessing, because nobody ever sees. Everything is humble. Everything's hush-hush. Everything is modest. Everything is bitzniut. And the Talmud says right there, that's how come the miracle of the conception and the development of a baby, as a fetus into finally a baby, can take place. Because it's hidden. No one sees. No one knows. That's the only way it could happen. And therefore we can take this lesson very seriously. Take the lesson and understand that what they did wrong was twofold, tenfold, and it was very severe. It started off with robbery, ended off with not being dressed, which brought to immorality, corruption, and all horrible things. Zat Hashem HaKadosh Baruch Hu will bless us. The merit of studying the Zera Shimshon, the merit of our Torah Kedosha, that we'll be blessed, we'll be happy, healthy, successful, and only good things for all of us and our families. Amen. We're going to make a Mishe Berach